my pet peeve is always you come in and maybe the buzzers are all labeled wrong or the mailboxes. So it's you've got the trash overflowing in the lobby. So I think the same thing on what you can do, especially when this property's on the market. Can you do your hallways need to be painted? Are the lights flickering? Are the light bulbs all different colors? Really look at it from a buyer's perspective. And I think even when you're attracting tenants look at that stuff too. Do they want to be in a building where, the lights are flickering? In the hallways, they want to feel safe and make it feel warm and inviting, and they can have other guests over too.
Yeah, that's really a good point. I mean, the finances are super important. The cash flow is important, but the perception that somebody has when they get into the property. I've been to properties that are for sale and they just don't show well, and I'm like, how come this owner didn't even try to clean it up a little bit? It is a common saying amongst real estate investors that you make money when you buy, not when you sell. While this catchy phrase has value, it fails to convey how easy it is to lose money through poor property management. Whether you self-manage or hire a professional, it is important to understand how to navigate the common pitfalls and challenges with rental properties without losing your shirt or your mind. That's why you have tuned in to Maximizing Your Property Value, the apartment owner's guide to operating rental properties as a successful business. I'm your host, John Stiles, real estate agent and team leader of the VIP Real Estate Group at Bridge Realty. As a current multifamily investor and former property manager myself, I understand the headaches and difficulties of keeping an investment property from becoming a money pit and time sucker. It takes a solid business plan. It takes tested systems, and it takes key team members to actually find success. So let's take a deep dive and maximize your property value. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Maximizing Your Property Value. I'm your host, John Stiles with Bridge Realty, and I'm so glad you have joined us again for another great episode. I'm pleased to introduce to you today Scott Haubrich. Scott, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to be here.
And Scott is the broker and owner of buyrentsell.com.
Yeah.
And Scott, why don't you take a moment to tell the audience a little bit about your background in real estate and then how you got started with your company now?
Sure. Yeah, so I've been in the real estate business probably about 17 years or so. Started actually working in the restaurant industry. Where with my parents, we own a Dairy Queen franchise, which is also real estate related, making burgers and blizzards to pay for that real estate. So got started in that industry and then got into the real estate business. Actually got started in rentals when the market cycled last time, and I had lived in a property way out in was in Mayer, Minnesota, so out quite a ways, and just wanted to move back, be closer to the city, closer to friends and stuff. So I ended up renting that property out, and then realized it was a nice way to work with people in terms of helping them find a rental place, and then also kind of following that process through as they wanted to buy a home, and just kind of built a rental portfolio from there as well. And then started out I started at Coldwell Banker, and then moved into some other companies before opening up my own brokerage in 2017.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. When you were working as an agent, you primarily working in residential sales, or how would you?
Yeah, I'd say a little bit of both. I mean, a little commercial and multifamily, mostly residential, but some of those, 1 to 4 and units are still considered residential. And then when you get 5+, they're considered the commercial. So
right.
Definitely, working with some investors in that market too. And especially as, the market changes and stuff, you get different buyers, of course, are out there and homeowners and things. So,
yep.
Yeah.
So why did you decide to open up buyrentsell.com?
Yeah, I figure, that's a good question. I got into that just because, that was kind of where my niche, I guess, was going, being able to help all those facets of people. And, I've helped several tenants that were tenants of mine and then purchase their first home and then actually sell their home. So it was kind of a good fit for what, my business model was. And that way I could, also facilitate those people, because I also helped a lot of people during the downturn that maybe couldn't sell their home, so then they kept it as a rental for a while, and we would manage their portfolio where they could move on, and if they had to move out of state for a job or move into a different house that better met their needs, we could rent it out and manage it for them. So it just was a good fit, I think.
Okay, great. And how would you describe your current portfolio of managed properties?
Sure.
Do you have a lot of single family, multifamily, or?
Yeah, it's a pretty good mix. So we have, I own my own properties as well, but then we also manage for individuals that maybe they just invest in condos. They want to, they like the idea of association taking over that outside maintenance. So we have a lot of like just single teeny little condos that maybe it's a newbie investor that's starting, all the way up to where we're managing, commercial properties or commercial, actually tenant, properties as far as residential apartment buildings and things like that. So, and single family. So we have a really good mix of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how large would you describe your company? Do you have several employees, brokers, or what does it look like?
Good question. Yeah, we have we have several independent agents that are just doing their own individual transactions. I'm sure much like your company too. And then we've got I do have a staff of a maintenance tech, and then we also have a full-time realtor / leasing assistant and things like that assist me with all the day-to-day managing the tenants and things like that, so I can be freed up to do things like this or bring in more business and things like that. So, yeah.
Okay, well, great. Thanks for kind of describing your business for us and your background, how you got into it.
Yeah.
So what we like to kind of cover in this show is helping our investors to really maximize their property value.
Yep.
Kind of like the name of the show.
Right.
So there's a lot of different things that go into that, of course. One key thing is having a great property manager on your team. Mm-hmm. So the first kind of set of questions I'd like to just go over with you is, how should a property owner really interview a manager and make sure that they're a good fit? Like, what kind of questions would be good to ask a manager?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a good thing. Maybe you'd want to find out, vacancy questions, what they're going to do to, if they have systems in place. I think that's a good, really good thing as far as systems. How often are touch points happening with the tenants? Because I think, at the end of the day that, we have you're kind of in a tricky role as a property manager. I mean, you're managing the tenants' expectations, but then you've also got to maximize the profits for your owners, and hopefully you're working with people that understand, you do maybe need to spend and invest a little money to have a good product and keep your tenants happy too, because gets to be a little tricky fine line. But I think, you'd want to do stuff like, why is it important to have good curb appeal even on a rental property, to attract tenants, keep your vacancy low, and kind of things like that. But maybe, screening process might be a good start if you're really just, interested in getting some other ideas from a property manager. But what's your screening process? Make sure they're up to date on a lot of the new screening rules and things that are coming down from the bigger cities, St. Paul, Minneapolis, and then, probably will start going into other cities as well, and how that's going to be managed, and how you can effectively still screen tenants and also limit your liability as a landlord and things. So I think that would be important to know as well.
Yeah.
And probably also to make sure, like, what's your maintenance plan? Do you have a timely response? Because of course you want to acknowledge that, that tenant, we received your maintenance request, but you don't want it sitting out there too or getting forgotten about, and how quick, that turnaround time is, because that can really be an issue for tenants. They want to know that, and actually a lot of them we have that they do really prefer that it's managed by a company. If a tenant is coming to lease a unit, they've maybe had negative experiences with owners as far as managing themselves. Just when is maintenance going to get done? Is it actually going to, are we going to get service too?
Yeah. Okay. So definitely. So making sure that the manager has good systems around filling vacancies and responding to maintenance are kind of two key things I took away from that.
Yeah. Yep. I would say that for sure.
another benefit that a manager brings to the table, kind of you touched on it a little bit there, is just their ability to scale the service to the tenants and also the broad experience that they bring to the table. So what is maybe an experience that you've had that in a problem that you've seen, and how did you resolve it? And kind of an example about the experience that you brought to the table and how that helped the situation.
Sure. I think a lot of it, we're kind of dealing right now with what's going on in the industry with the kind of the health scare here. And so I think, we are, trying to get out there ahead of it. One thing that we're doing is we've actually went to owners, because right now, actually the courts kind of has suspended the eviction process or any court hearings until at least the end of March at this point. We're not telling our tenants that, but of course we've got to communicate that to our owners, and then they're worried about, well, how do we mitigate that? And then also addressing tenants' concerns during, we're getting a lot of like, what happens if, can we still come in and show the unit or that kind of thing? And so we're letting them know that we're taking extra precautions. Maybe it's extra cleaning of common areas, as well as ensuring the owners on the other side that, we still are enforcing the lease. We're still collecting rent as normal. Maybe it's something where you're going to implement a policy on, hey, if you've been laid off, we'll try to work out a payment arrangement with you, maybe waive a late fee if you can prove that, you're going through a hardship. But you also don't want to interrupt that cash flow, because as owners, we still have mortgages and things to pay on the property. So I think from a tenant's perspective, also getting them to understand that, we're not just a big bad landlord trying to collect our rent. We've got bills and upkeep, on the same time of the property. And I think sometimes they don't see that, or they don't realize that, they just think, give everybody half off. That'd be great, and it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, definitely interesting times we're experiencing right now.
Right.
So is there anything else maybe related to this, this health scare that shall remain unnamed? No.
Yeah.
That you can recommend to owners, like, you recommend being do you recommend being proactively engaging the tenants to set expectations, or kind of just waiting and seeing what happens?
Yeah, I think at first you kind of want to, you don't know what to do either, because it's all a little bit unprecedented or whatnot. But I think you'd want to, if other people maybe talk to other managers, other owners, seeing kind of what they're doing and kind of make a plan of your own. So we did, luckily it's not the first, but I'm like, well, I'm sure we're going to get these questions coming in on the first. So let's kind of get ahead of this. And, at least you kind of show, that you're having a plan in place. So, maybe your policy is, we need to know before April 1st that you're going to be having a hardship, so we can, get a payment plan in place, and versus wait till the 5th rolls around and then, we've got a whole flood of calls or something.
Yeah.
And then just take up, extra, maybe you're closing, if it's a bigger complex, maybe you're closing your common gym or some of those common amenities to temporarily to kind of help that. Maybe extra sanitizing procedures, maybe clean the building once extra, making sure that, knobs and doorknobs and stuff like that are, extra Lysol or whatever you want to use to clean that.
Yeah, for sure. So it's definitely good to be proactive rather than just sit by and let things happen.
And I think the tenants appreciate that too. Then they can see that, they understand that things are being done. You are aware, you do care about their safety as well. It's almost like, if you, adding security cameras and things, that some people maybe could see that as a deterrent or whatever, but it's like, that's for your protection to deter other things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've heard that discussion as well. Like, will tenants worry that it's a bad location if you put up security cameras? Well, maybe some, but hopefully they'll see that, no, this is for their benefit and protection.
Yeah, and I'm surprised even, getting off onto that other topic, how many buildings are multifamily and they're not locked, they just still have an entrance that you can just open and walk right in. So, that'd be something too. I mean, do you feel safer having the cameras in a locked entrance? I would think so.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. On a related note, one of the things that I find is super important in this business is customer service. And so I'm wondering, what type of systems and processes do you have in place to make sure that your tenants are receiving the best customer service they can?
Yeah, so I mean, we do like those touch points. They can contact us. We have an office where they can stop in if they feel like they want to set up a meeting. Maybe if they're having a noise complaint, that you actually help facilitate a meeting with the disruptive parties to try to facilitate how can we mitigate this, and then that way they're feeling like you're actively involved in the management. Noise between other residents, or not just like, oh, you guys go figure it out amongst yourselves. So that could be a good way. But we do other touch points, like, around the holiday times, giving some kind of gift, or, a little, treat, cookies, something like that. And then also like birthday gifts, things like that.
Okay.
It's just extra, touch points with the tenants.
That's another interesting example with the noise complaints, because sometimes, especially if you have older buildings, there's not a lot you can do. Right.
And that's a big one. I mean, that's a big one with the older buildings for sure. It's like somebody walks and you can hear it, so.
Yeah. So, and I have definitely heard that side of things where, hey, we're not going to resolve all your issues. Why don't you talk to each other and figure it out? But so it sounds like how do you facilitate?
We've had to do that before. Yeah. I mean, it's a matter of like, and you've got to be careful too. Maybe they've got kids and now they're going to be home from summer break or whatever it may be. But there's at the same point though, you're still responsible for the kids. You can't be jumping off furniture and different things and disrupting the neighbors downstairs. So I think gets to be a tricky management position. But I encourage, let's set up a meeting. Let's try to improve it. Let's have a touch point. We had this mediation kind of thing. Let's touch base in a week and see if it's resolved. If it hasn't gotten any better, what other things can we do? Can you get maybe the tenant that's experiencing a lot of the noise? Have you considered maybe getting a noise machine, something else to help break it up? I mean, we obviously want you to still be comfortable in living your life and not be miserable, but everybody, there's kind of a fine line there too.
Yeah. And I think it does take some patience on the person that might be being inconvenienced.
Right.
I personally have 4 children, and we live in a multifamily property that we own. So we're very mindful of it,
Right.
But
the next person might not be, and
but even though we're mindful and we try to encourage the kids to be quiet, they're still kids, and they're going to do what they're going to do.
Right. Right. And I think some maybe being there to witness it. So when you're there, if you're witnessing something that shouldn't be, then you can kind of be like, well, there's something happening up there. I can hear it, and maybe having the other person come down and be in the space too. If the other person's comfortable with it, be in the space and do a noise test, walk around, make those noises. What are you hearing? And then maybe they didn't realize it was as loud as it is, or transfers.
Yeah, so definitely an awareness for everybody that's involved.
Yep,
So,
exactly.
Yeah, for sure. And then, so you've talked about having touch points with the tenants for maybe birthdays and such. So what does that look like? Is that like an email, a phone call, a letter?
Yeah, good question. We do, we've been doing like a little gifting service, so they can kind of pick out something that they want and get a surprise. Doesn't usually come right on their birthday, but maybe a week or so after. But that's the new thing that we've been implementing. Before that, we did kind of like a birthday text and, sent them a card, maybe like a little Starbucks card or something like that for their birthday. So over the holiday times, we've done different things like, maybe Christmas cookies or, holiday cookies, and then, or a gift card to a, restaurant, something like that.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like you're kind of going over and above. Some landlords or managers kind of feel like, you owe us the rent and that's that.
Right.
Why do you take the position of a gift at the birthday?
I think it does a good thing for our owners too. I mean, a lot of our tenants don't know that, maybe they don't understand that they're privately owned people. And so this we're kind of doing on a uniform front. And then this is what you're getting as, as management. You're getting a team behind you. And then we're also kind of trying to keep the tenants happy, because that's going to translate to them hopefully renewing their lease, or maybe, mitigate turnover costs. I mean, we still got to keep up with market rents and adjust rents accordingly, but this is just an extra thing to maybe can set us apart from the competition.
Yeah. So what system do you have in place to make sure that gets done? Because, coming up with a great idea like that is one thing, but actually implementing it is another.
Yep. Good question. So, a lot of times when we'll get their background check and things like that, we'll have their birth date on there, so we can right away implement that into our CRM and have it track, so it lets us know a few days before, let's say their birthday, for example, and that way we can push that out to send the gift. And then around the holiday times, it's pretty easy. We just, get the same thing and drop it off to their unit, or have them pick it up at our office too. So,
okay.
We've done a couple other things around, Halloween, something like that. If they want to stop by to the office, drop off their rent or whatever, but then they could pick up a pie or something like that.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting as well. I think a lot of owners and managers are not using a CRM,
sure,
a customer relationship management tool,
right?
Or at least if they are, it's probably just for tracking rent and not for caring, having a relationship with their customer, their resident.
Yeah, and I think we want to make it be as long as we can. I mean, maybe it's where it works the same way with a buyer or seller, but maybe the tenant wants to move and they want to move, that unit's no longer meets their needs, so they need a bigger unit or a smaller unit or something. But you could also have them come to you first rather than vacating. You've already have them as a client. Can you move them to another one of your properties that might fit their needs better? Or if they're moving out of state, can you refer them to another agent in another state that, can take good care of them? And then, they've kind of got that referral.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely. If they appreciate the way that the relationship is set with you, they're more likely to work with you, even if they do move from that one unit.
Right, exactly.
So when you're paying, obviously gifts are going to cost money. Is that coming out of the owner's budget, or is that coming out of your budget?
Usually that does come out of our budget. So we're collecting a management fee from the owners, but we've kind of built in, some perks of, that does cost us a little more, but it's also a benefit of the owners working with us. They're going to get some of these touch points to their tenants too. So
yeah, well, that's a real benefit to the owner, because they're getting that improved customer service to their residents,
right?
And it benefits you even aside from the owner, because they may do business with you otherwise.
Right, or exactly, or move to another unit or buy a property. So
yeah. Well, very neat. That's a couple new things I haven't really heard before from other people.
Good.
So then turning around to discuss the customer service relationship with the owner, what does that look like for you? How do you set up systems to make sure that your owners are satisfied?
Yeah. So, I mean, communication, I think that's the biggest thing in our industry too. I always encourage our owners, if there's an issue, I mean, same thing, just like the tenants, we need to be made aware of it, what's working, what's not working for you. What can we improve on? Is there something you'd like to see different? Maybe we have an idea, like some properties, we're saying, hey, if it's a duplex, can we, implement a second water meter or something like that to help the owner make more money? Maybe it's, a lot of times, what can we improve on a unit? The cost per unit's gone up quite a bit over the years. So can we finish some kind of space in your unit to bring in additional revenue? Maybe it's cut expenses in some way that's also not going to sacrifice service. So maybe we look at, like I said, that water meter example. Can we inexpensively add in another water meter that, maybe it's a few $1,000s, but you're going to make that up because now the tenants can pay their own water meter or water bill, and not, maybe you don't increase the rent as much, but the owner's still making money because now they don't have to pay that bill.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good way to improve the cash flow there. Wonderful. Sure. What do you recommend as the frequency for an owner to visit their properties?
Honestly, we have some that never have. A lot of times that happens, especially with out-of-state investors. I actually work with some investors I've never met in person. So, there's that trust that comes into play. I mean, maybe for that particular owner, they want to see a video walkthrough. Sometimes they rely on inspection reports to purchase a property. Maybe, we'll make an offer and then they'll get a home inspection and be able to do their due diligence that way. And I think it's what works for them, and also your property management software too. So do they have, a remote access or a portal or something like that where they can log in and, and view these inspection turns, or if it's a maintenance thing that's costing a lot of money, are we providing them with 3 bids so they know that, these are accurate and this is the best price. I mean, we've got a lot of preferred vendors that we work with, so we can ensure the owners that we're getting good pricing on things that might, not be an everyday occurrence or a capital improvement expense.
Okay. By the way, what software do you guys use?
Yeah, so we're currently using a Yardi software. We are actually in the process of interviewing a couple other providers too, to further improve customer service to both tenants and owners. So, that might be switching, but at this point it's a Yardi platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. What about yourself as a company? How often do you visit the properties?
Yeah, so we do a check once every quarter with with just doing a walkthrough. It could be a drive-by. I mean, in a different case, like let's say maybe I'm showing a house or something to a buyer, but we manage a property close by. I might take a little trip by the area just to see what's happening. I always try to go over to the neighbors of the rental properties that we manage. So if it's a single family home, kind of introduce yourself, make sure they know that you're the manager and that you want to be diligent about the property in their neighborhood. And so if they have any issues, contact us so we can know about it. So that's a good way to also kind of be in touch with the neighbors around a rental property and have their information as well. But I'd say, yeah, once a quarter we're doing an inspection on the unit. And we're usually in there more anyway for doing a maintenance, repair. I think it's odd if you wouldn't get some kind of maintenance request that you'd have to go in the unit for.
Mm-hmm. What types of things are you looking for when you do these quarterly drive-bys or inspections?
Yeah, I mean, you're going to look for things like just from when you start up, is there maybe any maintenance or deferred items that they haven't reported that need to get addressed? Is there peeling paint? Is the handrail loose on the outside coming up to the property? Is if the tenants are responsible for lawn and snow, are those items being done, or do you need to reach out to the vendor that's doing those items and say, hey, there's weeds, things like that. And then as far as going inside, you want to make sure that smoke alarm, CO2, all the safety things are in place. If you see anything, illegal going on, you'd want to, note that and follow your protocol for dealing with that. Same thing, like if there's excess trash or maybe hoarding or something like that, you want to mitigate that before you get to the end of their term and now you've got a garage full of things that shouldn't be there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sounds good. Like a lot of different things to check there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just reminding myself, I should probably put together a checklist for whenever I do property visits. So.
Yeah, and I think now with all the technology to video pictures is really helpful. We with the software that we have, you can actually take a picture and put it into the inspection report. So if there is something you need to go back, and then you're touching base with the tenants on, okay, this is what we observed, where we have to issue you a violation notice maybe, or a correction action for some things that we found that weren't right. And another thing, I know everybody hates that beeping smoke alarm or CO2, and a lot of times the tenants are cooking, maybe it gets taken down. So one of the things we've been trying to do is put in those 10-year sealed batteries so they can't take them out.
Okay.
That helps too. It costs a little bit more up front, but then now you're not having to replace batteries every turn either. So, with the 10 years, when the smoke detector expires, you throw it out and put a new one in.
Okay. I didn't realize they had those types.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice thing. They do cost a little more, but it's I think it's a lithium ion battery that it's basically good until the detector's not good anymore and you don't have to replace them.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to look into that. for our intentional investors who are not accidental landlords, but
Sure.
who are really into the property as an investment, they're going to be looking a lot at their bottom line. What are ways that you have found to either increase the income, although you've already mentioned one, but anything else, and also decrease the expenses?
Yeah, I mean, I think expenses can get really out of control, especially with utilities. I mean, maybe you look into doing some kind of RUB program. Those get a little bit tricky if you have different unit size, but that's basically where you can try to bill tenants back for, maybe you've got a 10-unit apartment building, and you're trying to have everybody pay a portion of either the heat or the water bill. So that could be a way to keep the rent where it's at, but then also make the tenants a little bit responsible for their utility usage. I would say if it's a common boiler system, adding what's called a PTEC unit on the boiler is a really good way to work with your HVAC person. And that.
So what is PTEC?
Yeah, or I believe it's I don't know if it might be the wrong word. It's basically a boiler control valve that you actually install on the boiler. So it's maybe a few $1,000s, but you put this on and it actually measures the outside temperature and the inside temperature. So sometimes you'll pull up to a building and it's 80 degrees and all the tenants have got the windows open. So as a landlord, you're paying for those extra costs. You'd want to implement a rule that they can't open the windows in the wintertime, but then also this boiler control helps control the temperature of the boiler so you don't have to have it on a constant temperature. Maybe if it's really, really cold out below 10 degrees, then the boiler's running at a higher higher level, or I don't know the technical terms of the boiler, but a higher flame level. So you're mitigating your cost. And then if it's 20 degrees out, it's not running the boiler quite so hot. So it's kind of automatically adjust the temperature based on the temperature outside, and that can help your natural gas cost.
Yeah.
But doing things like really making sure whoever's paying that water bill, maybe if the owner's paying the water bill and not the management company, you need to make sure that the management company knows if you're seeing a huge spike in water usage, because maybe you've got a leak in a toilet or something like that. And even just a little drip can really be thousands and thousands of dollars in water charges.
Yep. That's a huge thing right there. Speaking of tenants opening the windows in the wintertime, I don't know if you got the answer, but why in the world does that happen? I see that.
Right. And some of it is maybe they don't have zone controls on their boiler. Maybe we've actually had some that we've taken over that they were installed wrong, or the thermostats were broken. So even though the thermostat's in the unit and the tenants can, it's a common boiler, but the tenants can control their own heat, it should close the zone valve in their particular unit to not give them any more heat and kind of bypass their unit. But if they're installed wrong or there's a problem with them, it can just keep giving them, all the heat. And I think that could be a really good reason of, but again, that communication with them, you'd rather hear it from them and then actually be able to fix the problem. I think also following up with your maintenance team or your HVAC team is like, did they actually fix the problem? So once that maintenance request has been done, check back in with the tenant as another touch point. Has it been completed? We have this invoice we got to pay now. Did they actually fix it? If they didn't fix it, we need to manage that situation and get them back out to still address the problem. There still must be something going on.
Yeah, that's another example of communicating well with the tenants and even setting expectations about potential issues, so that they know if they feel the urge to open the window in the winter,
dead of winter. Yeah, exactly.
They should let you know as the manager.
Right. And then also monitoring that. I mean, I think that's again a fine line, especially if you're in a building with common heat. That's going to be a lot of, somebody might want it 80 degrees and somebody else is sweating to death and they need it at, 65. And then certain rules or cities have rules that, you got to keep it at a minimum temperature. So, as an owner, you want to keep it at somewhat of a minimum temperature for expense purposes, but you also got to comply with local rules and also kind of figure out what's too hot and what's, manage that too.
Yeah, well, those are some great examples. When an owner or yourself are making renovations to a property, have you found any products that are really good to keep in mind as far as the longevity of them, so that you don't have to replace something again in the next year or the year after?
Right. Good question. We really like there's like some luxury vinyl tile that a lot of people have been going to. It's kind of wear proof if you're accepting pets, it shouldn't scratch. And also, water resistant or waterproof. I think they've come a long way in that. And then also with that sound issue too, there are a lot of them that actually have almost like a rubber mat on the back, and it can be pretty thick, so that can really help with noise. But I think you do want to be mindful of, like, if you're in a multifamily and you're moving away from carpet to that, you really want to be concerned with a product that is hopefully improving your sound transferability, and then also being something where you don't have to continually every couple years replace the carpet. And maybe you pay a little bit more now for it, but it's lasting you longer in the long run.
Yeah.
But
so
I think, go ahead.
Don't get the thinnest plank, the vinyl plank.
Right.
That you have available.
Right. I think you want to weigh in those, costs, and maybe something is also like, if you're planning on keeping the property longer term, that you might make a different decision than if you're planning on selling it in a year or two. Maybe you would, make a different decision, but that can also weigh into, the next person that's buying this, or the next investor might, wished you would have put in something different, more soundproof. But you gotta make that judgment call too.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think you could do other things like, maybe if you're putting in granite or quartz or something like that, but maybe you can use a remnant or something. If you don't have huge kitchens, you can maybe splurge on those extra areas where you're going to get the most return for your money too.
Yeah. So you splurge on those areas, meaning
kitchens. If your kitchen's not huge, it shouldn't cost maybe you're going to renovate a unit and spend $5,000 on every kind of update the flooring and update appliances or update countertops, things like that, to give you an upgraded feel.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. And these investment properties, they often have a life cycle of being purchased, being managed, and then being sold.
Right.
And a lot of emphasis is put on just that finding the deal, purchasing the deal, which is why in this particular podcast, I'm trying to focus more on that interim period of managing.
Sure.
But when maybe an owner tells you that they're thinking about selling in the next 6, 12, 18 months, what are things that you would recommend to them to consider doing, or different things to prepare the property so that it's really going to show its best when they do go to sell the property? Great
question. Yeah, I think there's quite a few. One might be let's say you're in a duplex, for example, you're in a different mindset because you're also appealing to an investor or a owner-occupant buyer. Some of those owner-occupant buyers might, even 1 to 4 units, might need to occupy one of the units as their loan terms, and they might be willing to pay more than a typical investor to owner-occupy that property. But then you have to make sure that maybe one of the leases at least is timed where they could move into that unit versus they're not all. Because a lot of people's loan types, if they're doing FHA financing or something like that, they have to move in with like 60 days, I think it is. And so if it's, if you're assuming all your leases, you wouldn't be, that would exclude that buyer. You also want to make sure that I wouldn't say that you'd want to have your rents at market rent if you can, or get them up. I mean, a lot of times, I'm sure you've seen buildings too, where the building's almost all vacant, and that's great to show, but you have to keep in mind who you're marketing that to. And usually everything's, even the way that buyers qualify and investors qualify for these products, is cash flow. So if you can keep your rents up, even increasing them a little bit, that can help your sale price. And then on the flip side, if you're an investor looking to buy one of these properties, can you see is there an opportunity to just come in day one and raise rents $50 or something like that, and now you've got that much more influx of cash. So
yeah, for sure,
that would be a good way too. And then just kind of your cleanliness, making sure that my pet peeve is always you come in and maybe the buzzers are all labeled wrong, or the mailboxes. So it's kind you've got the trash overflowing in the lobby. So I think the same thing on what you can do, especially when this property is on the market. Can you Do your hallways need to be painted? Are the lights flickering? Are the light bulbs all different colors? Really look at it from a buyer's perspective, and I think even when you're attracting tenants look at that stuff too. Do they want to be in a building where the lights are flickering? I don't, in the hallways they want to feel safe and make it feel warm and inviting, and they can have other guests over too.
Yeah, that's really a good point. I mean, the finances are super important. The cash flow is important, but the perception that somebody has when they get into the property. I've been to properties that are for sale and they just don't show well, and I'm like, how come this owner didn't even try to clean it up a little bit?
Right. Yep, and you want to get kind of, if you're thinking that year out or whatever, get your expenses kind of in line, but then also maybe you want to do some capital expenses so you can show that you've got new carpet in the hallways or what have you. Maybe add some new mulch out there right before you're ready to go on the market. If it's summertime or spring, put some flowers versus just mowing the grass and it's all brown and dead. You might have to water it a little bit to make it look visually appealing too.
Yep. Yeah, those are definitely some good considerations. You don't want to be caught in a situation where you appear desperate.
Right.
Because then you'll get those type of offers.
Right, exactly.
Very good. So, what are some challenges or opportunities that you see going forward? We've had, as you've talked about, two concerns are this virus that's going around and also just city regulations that are tightening in on landlords. Maybe talk about that or other things that you see as just either challenges or opportunities going forward into 2020 and beyond.
Yeah, I think that's going to continue as far as, cities cities are really looking for affordable housing, and then obviously as owners, we're fronting the risk. I mean, we're investing in these properties, so we've got a lot of liability and risk. I think that we'll have to see a lot of what comes down from that. I mean, is there going to be, some kind of lawsuit or something between cities and landlord groups and things like that, just to, mitigate different things? I think a lot of it is a work in progress, and maybe certain city officials don't realize the certain consequences and things. So I think that's something to be mindful of how that goes. But I think we are going to see some of that, continue in the years to come. And then, just further regulations, I'm sure, on rental property owners as far as that goes.
Yeah. Are you seeing any changes in tenant expectations of either amenities that they have or just different things like that?
Yeah, I think, especially if you're in an A-class type property, I mean, there's always going to be that tenant that wants new. They want that for the lifestyle. You know what I mean? They're renting in a luxury place for the pool and different things. And that could change now, as depending on how long those amenity areas need to be closed. Are they going to, I would say in those situations, those tenants are going to argue like, well, we're paying for these amenities, that's why we rented here. Do we get some kind of concession for that? Or, hey, I quit my gym membership to use this gym and now this is closed. So I could see things like, people that are managing those type of properties get those kind of objectives coming through, and then they're going to have to work with their residents as well as their owners to figure that out. Being C-class properties, I think I think there's going to probably be a continued push for affordability units. So you might have to really watch the, other competition on the market and see what they're doing to attract tenants or retain tenants too. Maybe it's something where you have to keep the rent the same year over year, or you kind of maybe you can't push it up as much. So things like that, but you got to be mindful of the market. And if the market is commanding a higher rent, I think you got to, keep in there as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, definitely lots of considerations. Got to stay focused or stay informed about these different changes that are going on.
Right.
So, well, listen, as we need to wrap things up here, I want to give the audience a little bit of an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better.
Sure.
So one of the questions I want to ask you is, why do you get up in the morning?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I love my job, I guess. So I think it's all how you manage it, and some days you just wake up and there's going to be challenges, but how do you deal with it? And I think you just got to take it piece by piece, and it's, being a problem solver, I think, and figuring out how you can help people at the end of the day. That's the hat that you wear.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, for sure. And then what person or event in your past was kind of monumental to creating who you are today?
I'd probably say my dad. I think my dad's been a really, really hard worker his whole life. He's still working today, 2 jobs. So I think something in the workflow, and you still want to obviously work smarter, not harder, right? But I think it goes hand in hand. I think if you do put in, you do have to be in the trenches sometimes. I still go on property inspections and unit showings, and I think you need to do that to kind of keep a focus on your business as well, and know what's going on, and also be there for an employee if they have a challenge or something, and how do we evaluate it as a company to solve that problem.
Okay, yeah, very good. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they'd like to learn more about your company?
Yeah, sure. You can visit our website, which is the same as our company name, buyrentsell.com, or you can always call us as well, 612-298-5400.
Very good. Well, I appreciate all your insight that you've been able to share with us today.
You bet.
I wanted to give you a small token of my appreciation, which is
Awesome.
This official Maximizing Your Property Value mug.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
So you're more likely to drink coffee, tea, hot chocolate?
Coffee. I think coffee. I'm a coffee guy, yeah.
All right, that's my informal poll that we do here. So
good.
All right.
Coffee is good.
Very good. Well, Scott, I appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
I appreciate the audience listening and viewing this. If you got anything out of this, be sure to write a comment, give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. That'd be really appreciated. And go ahead and share this out with somebody else that might also benefit from this. And we will see you on the next one. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The opinions shared on this show are for informational purposes only and should not be taken as a solicitation for representation or investment in any specific offering. Please consult with your financial, legal, tax, and real estate advisor before making any investment decisions. John Stiles is a licensed Minnesota real estate agent with Bridge Realty. Thanks for tuning in to Maximizing Your Property Value, the apartment owner's guide to operating rental properties as a successful business. If you're considering scaling up, downsizing, or right-sizing your real estate investment portfolio, it's important to know how to determine your property's value in today's market. That's why I've put together a free ebook for you called How to Calculate Your Investment Property's Value. To get your copy, go to www.realestatestyles.com/value. Now, if you found any value in today's show, be sure to subscribe to our email newsletter, YouTube channel, and podcast through your favorite podcast player. All the links are in the show notes. And would you do me a big favor? Help me get the word out about this show by sharing with your friends on Facebook and LinkedIn. And lastly, we appreciate your 5-star rating on iTunes. I really appreciate you and wish you the best in your real estate investing career. Signing off, I'm John Stiles with Bridge Realty. Make it a great day.